Hello, my name is Ashir Muhammad Mushtaq Abdul Qadar Hussain Iqbal Basir Azim here with, and you're watching Euronews. There have been early reports around our country of acid rain. Reports and tests divulge that acid rain is being recorded by scientists all over the country and everyone is going wild. So, we brought our own scientist over to answer some questions about this topic in the scientific perspective. Here are a few words from Dr. Porg Montgomery. Okay, well, acid rain is largely caused by intense amounts of sulfur dioxide and nitrate getting released by industrial activities like coal burning. What happens is the toxic fumes, nitrogen and sulfur dioxide molecules, which result in high levels of nitric and sulfuric acids, which is as bad as it sounds, it falls down as precipitate, or rain, affecting aquatic wildlife, land wildlife, buildings, agricultural functioning. It can even occur in the form of snow, fog, and tiny bits of dry material that settle to earth, making its originating location and cause pretty hard to depict. Alright, right now we have Mr. Leek Madik, who will tell us a little bit about how government regulations and such have an effect on the amount of acid rain. Mr. Leek? Mr. Leek. You're supposed to talk now. Okay, so the main controversial issue that a lot of people want to deal with is property rights. Most of the pollution originates from US factories and eventually ends up flowing through our winds, affecting our structures and properties. Airborne pollutants released from the US increase acidity in high mountain streams and the Rockies in Canada. Gus Speth, actually, the president of the World Resources Institute, said, "We now see that acid rain is a national issue, hitting both East and the West." Although the governments weren't on complete relative terms, the US and Canada did agree on Canada's complaint that they believed that the acid rain deposits originated in the Middle West. This is when Canada had realized that most of the emissions were being carried out through American airs, where they originated. Now, the Canadian and American governments were fighting over how the emissions were crossing borders and invading Canadian premises, creating property issues between both governments. The US and Canada did act upon this and they reduced US sulfur dioxide emissions by the Clean Air Act in 2000. Now, Canada and the US also signed an air quality agreement, I believe in 1999, by President George W. Bush and Brian Mulroney, stating that the emissions created by the US would need to have reduced transboundary air emissions since it was negatively affecting Canadian climate and property. Now, as you would think, the agreement worked, and it worked pretty damn well. The Clean Air Act reduced US sulfur dioxide emissions from 16 million tons a year in the 1980s to 11 tons by the year 2000. Alright, well, what do you think about the government and other stakeholders on this topic? Like, what do you think they really want? I mean, the government generally wants to do the best they can to protect acid rain from destroying wildlife and buildings, which they did by contributing money and resources for the Clean Air Act. They also aim to improve the quality of life for citizens and make sure they don't get majority affected by the acid rain. Now, speaking of citizens, majority of the people want to reduce emissions from the daily objects and products they use, like cars and trucks. Environmental scientists are just trying to find new ways to, produce power without the major usage of fossil fuels and harmful gases, and trying to dissect acid rain to find beneficial techniques on how to substantially reduce acid rain or even stop it. I mean, scientists even say they can now predict how much pollution can fall in a certain area before significant damage is done to specific plant, animal, and insect species. And by controlling upwind pollution sources like smokestacks, automobile emissions, etc., government regulations can set safe emission standards for every area of the United States. However, industrial facilities and mining industries don't really care about what they're doing to the environment, or the people, I guess. All they want out of their business is profit, nothing more. Not much action has been taken to reduce acid rain caused by industrial factories. Only minor amendments that have been forced onto industries by government regulations that were made to reduce emissions, like using less fossil fuels and burning less coal to create power. Unlike the industries and relative to how the government deals with acid rain, the provincial and territorial ministers of energy and environment actually have targets and timelines to reduce CO2 emissions as soon as possible. The ministers want to eventually reduce the amount of emissions and greenhouse gases emitted by industries. The ministers also signed a Canada-wide acid rain strategy, which expands on the effort of the last decade to reduce pollutants that cause acid rain. Alright, folks, well, that's been all for today. This has been Your News. I've been your host, Ashir Muhammad Mushtaq Abdul Qadar Hussain Iqbal Basir Azim, herewith, and we'll see you next time.